We're continuing on in our sermon series about Jesus the human, which I think is very important because most of these documents that we rely upon, called the New Testament, were written in the first century. They had a very different worldview. We were talking before the sermon about they were traveling to Caesarea Philippi. You perhaps don't realize that Caesarea Philippi was not looked upon very proudly by Jewish people because it was built by one of Herod's sons, Philippi, and it was named after Caesar, so the Caesarea, and his name, Philippi. They were not going to a town that they were really that excited about going to. So it was interesting to get clear about what people were talking out there. But we have a gospel that was written in the first century. We have creeds that were written in the 4th and 5th century. And we have our liturgies that were written in the 15th and 16th century. And things have changed a lot. And trying to get clear on what's being said is a faith struggle. And it faces everyone of every generation. One thing you have to remember about Christianity is that there are no second-generation Christians. We are a decisional faith. It's not handed on parent to child or because you happen to be of a certain ethnic group. The only process by which one becomes a Christian is by decision, by intention. So we carry on and look back and try to see what's being said and then struggle within our own lives as to what that means for us. Today we're talking about Jesus and the hero, and there were heroes in that day, just like there are today. Heroes were those that people believed in would change their external situation. The Romans were looking for the perfect Caesar who would guarantee that they would always be secure and safe and that their military would be strong, and their hero was the Caesar. Many religions had their messiahs, their Christs, their heroes. Among the Jewish faith, there was the idea that David would come back, that he would be a strong general, that he would wipe out all of the enemies of Israel and make them number one. And all they had to do was to wait and to be patient and to be faithful and true. And there were other religions that had their heroes that would come and alter their external situation. And as you look around today, we have hero worship among us, waiting and hoping that somebody's going to come along that sets everything right and that we get to live the good life and everything is okie dokie. Now into this comes our eschatological hero, Jesus. And Jesus is going to Caesarea Philippi, and he asked his disciples, well, what's the news out there? Who are people saying that I am? And they give him a bunch of answers. You know, some say John the Baptist, other Elijah. That is from the prophetic tradition, because he quotes a lot from the prophets. And then Peter lets the cat out of the bag and says, you're the Christ. And Jesus says, I don't want that out. Don't say that. And you can understand why. Because Jesus was a different kind of Messiah, and he did not want to be defined by the understandings that were out there as to what Christ or Messiah meant. He was a Messiah that was no Messiah. He was the opposite of the Messiahs that people look for. He was a Messiah that relied upon the weakness of God rather than the power of man. He was one that saw life the way it is. And that's the way it is. And he was not out to change the way it is. He was not out to alter the external circumstances in which everyone lives. He was not out to give people a free pass. His messiahship was to release people to be free to live their life as it was and is. I want to read to you a piece from 1 Corinthians. I lost my place. The 18th chapter, first verse, the 18th chapter. If you want to follow this in your Bible, you're welcome to do so. This is Paul speaking. Now, Paul wrote much closer to the time of Jesus than the Gospels. Paul probably wrote maybe 10 or 15 years after the crucifixion, or maybe even sooner. And in the first chapter, the 18th verse, it goes like this. For the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the cleverness of the clever I will thwart. Where is the wise man? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of the world did not know God through wisdom, it pleased God through the folly of what we preach to save those who believe. For Jews demand signs and Greeks seek wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews, a folly to Gentiles. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. For this Messiah, instead of taking over the world and beginning to have this reign of being of paramount importance, was crucified as a criminal. Lost his life. Like many other Jewish men lost their life for speaking up or trying to interfere with the Roman government in one way or another. Was not uncommon. And here this Christ, this Messiah, loses his life.